Good evening, everyone. My name's Councillor Peter McKenna. I'll be your chair this evening. Welcome to the January 29th Committee of the Whole meeting. We'll start with our land acknowledgement. And on January 29th, we acknowledge this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We're grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for the contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on our strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. Thank you. So this meeting is called to order at 5 p.m. and I'll seek a motion from my colleagues that the January 29th Special Committee of the Whole agenda be approved as circulated. Moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Quinn. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Looking at that agenda, are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest thereof? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. On item 10.3, the police request for the pre-approval for a police cruiser, I will be declaring a conflict as my daughter-in-law is the acting chief.
Thank you. So noted. Anything further? Seeing none. We have no approvals. We are delighted to have the Hospice Hub here. Ann Jansen's going to lead us through a 10-minute and 30-second Hospice Hub presentation. Welcome, Ann. It's so nice to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors. Do I face you rather than, so excuse my back. So it's great to be here. And Carrie, thank you so much for organizing this so at somewhat of the last minute for us. So does anybody have any history of death in their family? Probably not. We're all immortals here, perhaps. So I'm going to do my best to be brief, giving a little bit of background about the Hospice Hub and where we're at today and how we can serve the people of Smiths Falls and what we're asking from the town of Smiths Falls as well. So the Hospice Hub is and aims to be a one-stop shop where patients and families can access clinical and compassionate care and receive support navigating the healthcare system at the end of life. We support anyone who's at the end stage of a progressive disease, whether it's cancer, ALS, frailty, or end of life due to old age. And we connect patients, families, and caregivers to the most appropriate provider, service, or agency to ease the transitions through end of life and bereavement. Just to clarify this, because this still comes up, and I'm sure all of you know, especially with Peter McKenna on your council here, hospice is not a location and palliative is not a designation. Hospice is actually a philosophy of care that delivers palliative care at the end of life. And palliative care is an approach to care that can be delivered during a life-limiting illness at any time, on and off. People don't have palliative care and then that's it. You can go in and out of palliative care alongside curative treatment as well. Hospice care is holistic care that meets the unique needs of the patient and family, and that's very important. It doesn't just focus on the patient, but whoever they feel their family is as well, through end of life and bereavement. 70% of people wish to die at home, and yet 70% of people die in the hospital. And those numbers will go up depending on the research or that you're looking at. The cost of dying in hospital, I won't even go into this because you know this. It's extraordinary. It's far more than at hospice or at home, in hospice or at home. But it's not just the financial cost. It's the social, emotional cost of dying in the hospital. It creates moral distress for the frontline workers, for the administrators, and of course for the family that are grieving afterwards. So dying is, for the most part, not a medical event. It doesn't actually need to take place in a hospital. It is a social event that happens in the family and community. In fact, 80% of care at any time is actually provided by the family and the community, with only 20% of care being medical. And that community is all these crazy bubbles that don't even fit on and are very confusing. Don't even try to look at it. But it's people, it's the home and community care, it's the nurse practitioners, PSWs, the quilters, the pets. It's everybody that together will form the care that's needed at home at end of life. Or not just, and home can be wherever you call home. It could be long-term care, it's a retirement residence. So this is where the Hospice Hub comes in. It's to connect all of those different community resources, as well as connecting it to the healthcare system and the medical system. The Hub has a number of different spheres of focus: home support program, which will be launching in July this year, a day hospice program, which will come in the future, education, awareness, and advocacy, and to make sure that hospice and palliative care remain on the agenda, that it's seen as a part of a public health approach to care. Education, for example, and advanced care planning, that people know what's available to them and what they can ask for. Hospice beds is part of the program. While we do the home support, we're focusing on the business case for hospice beds. And you in Smith Falls were quite close, closer than anybody in our area, and navigation and caregiver support. So and the caregiver support, obviously, for those who are caring for others, and then grief and bereavement. And I'm very happy that Patty, our bereavement coordinator, is here with us today, and our board member. So this, again, you know all of this, so I'll speak even faster for this one. This is where we're at in South Lanark and in Smith Falls. Our region is aging at an unprecedented rate. We have an acute care crisis. Hospitals are over capacity. We have a home care crisis where nurses and PSWs, great shortage. Workforce is burnt out. Care is still siloed and uncoordinated, and the palliative care suites in the hospital I know that sounds dire, but there really is light at the end of the tunnel, and that pun is intended. The paramedics are, as you know, wonderful paramedics, both in Lanark and Leeds Grenville, are providing community care and palliative care programs. This is a program that has great potential to still be tapped into, far more than is already happening now. Our Ontario Health team, the LLG, has hospice palliative care as their new priority population, one of. The Hospice Hub is up and almost running. I don't expect you to be able to read this slide, but it was basically just to show you that in 2018, the 4 beds were allocated to our region, as I think you probably are all well aware. Those beds are still available. That money is still earmarked to our region. And we're in touch with Ontario Health East to discuss these beds as well. So where are we at now? We've been focusing very much on building the foundation. We were incorporated in March 2023. So in less than a year, it has been just huge strides because of the amazing community support and the community that have come out. Meeting with all the healthcare allies and partners. A big supporter is the Perth and Smith Falls District Hospital. They are obviously acutely aware of the need for hospice and will be our flow-through agency for any funding coming from the ministry. Paramedics looking to partner as well. I think that'll be a very close partnership. And then we've been meeting with the primary care providers, family health teams, nurse practitioner clinic in Smith Falls, community health centers, long-term care, and home and community care support services, of course, and community home support in Lanark County. And our district health unit, also great supporters. I had a very exciting meeting with them actually recently. And then we're members of our Ontario Health team, and we're meeting with Ontario Health East and the Regional Palliative Care Networks. This is just to say that we're part of a bigger network of healthcare providers. Community engagement. So our meetings were jam-packed. The first two community meetings we had, 80 to 100 people were there. But not only did they come out, they actually became engaged and they're committed, which is actually a whole other step. And we're very fortunate because we hear so many people saying that they're struggling to find volunteers. And we're finding that we're fortunate enough to be receiving volunteers. They're providing in-kind support, becoming accountants, providing pro bono graphic design, website, Algonquin College and an office space, the pro bono clinical care team with a nurse, PSW, social worker, physiotherapist. And then those volunteers that are over 50 of them, they are being trained both in home support as well as in organizational support. They're an incredible community of skilled, experienced administrators, nurses, teachers, facilitators, etc. 200 subscribers and counting. Our email list continues to grow, even though we're not putting the word out so much. And all of these letters of support that have been coming from all of those that we've mentioned so far, from the health community, as well as the Lanark County Situation Table, MPP John Jordan, and etc. So sustainability and just being viable is hugely important to us. We're here in this for the long term. It's a marathon and we're growing slowly but steadily. The Perth and District Community Foundation are hosting our hub so that we can receive charitable donations through them. We've been writing grants and received grants in order to hire a part-time operations support person who starts on February 1st, which is huge. It's our first time we have an employee. And insurance kicks in on February 1st too. And that's another big cost and important factor. And then, as I said already, strong board of directors. So next steps, these are not actually next steps because they're ongoing, but fund development is an ongoing thing. Clinical policies and procedures, we're working with the family doctors and the hospital to see what they need for us to do seamless referrals. And so we're going to be implementing Ocean e-referrals as part of the OHT that's being offered to us for free, the support for it as well. Getting Info Anywhere set up, which is a info management system that manages the clients, the volunteers, the donors, etc. And it was made by Hospice for Hospice in Canada. Training of the volunteers starts in March. It's a robust hospice palliative care organization training program that is in person at Algonquin College, 30 hours of training. And of course, the hospice residents business case that continues to be negotiated. And then the home support, which is launching in July. So this is to be really clear. What are we asking from the town of Smith Falls? We're asking for $25,000. And what will we do with it? This is to continue to do everything that we've just said, to print, Zoom, phone, fundraise, support, train, organize, and mobilize the Smith Falls community. And the focus really would be Smith Falls. There's a lot that's happened because of support already in Perth. We have volunteers from Smith Falls, but we really need to be able to come out here and perhaps even host the training here next time in the fall rather than hosting it at Algonquin College in Perth. We needed to provide hospice care to people dying, grieving, and caregiving in Smith Falls, to advocate, educate, build, and partner, and to get those hospice beds here in our community. This is a really quick overview at our current budget, and that is because so much of our staffing is volunteer and pro bono. But a quick is for 2024, we're looking to raise at least $164,000. And out of that, we've already been given $50,000 in kind support. And then very modestly estimating $75,000. There will be far more, it'll be double. But that's what the modest estimate of what we will raise. So that's on that 125. That leaves the balance of 39, of which we're hoping for the 25,000 from Smith Falls. And why we want it is this funding, and we will use every dollar very wisely and carefully. It will keep dying people out of the hospital. It will reduce hallway medicine and ER crowding. It lowers overall healthcare costs. It attracts nurses, PSWs, nurse practitioners, and volunteers. We've been finding that, and I think that's the same thing that we're seeing with our volunteer program, is that people are wanting a different pace of life, that it's very meaningful work, and they may be retiring from the hospital and then are wanting to get engaged in the hospice. It also taps into the incredible strengths and assets of this community. And from what I see from Smith Falls, it is one of those kinds of compassionate communities. It builds the capacity of the community, healthcare, and social agencies to work together to deliver seamless holistic care. And it breaks down those healthcare silos and makes the connections that are so essential for quality end-of-life experience. So, and finally, and I suppose most importantly, it reduces suffering and increases quality of life for those who want to live as long and as well as possible. Thank you. Was that 11 minutes? Just over.
It was great,
Okay,
and
good.
thank you very much.
So thank you very much for having us here. This is Snoopy, who ends on something very profound.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you
I'll
very
just
much. Oh,
turn to-
questions, of course.
I'll just turn to my colleagues and see if anyone has any comments or questions. Mayor Panko.
Sure. Thanks, Anne. I really appreciate the presentation. And like based on your, I guess, the commentary that 70% of people which would choose to die at home if given the choice. And it seems like it's probably about 30% less than what I would have expected. But anyway, yet, I mean, I know this has been a work in progress for a long time. And the hope of having, or the plan to have four beds located somewhere for I guess, inpatient support, and then outreach in the community for people who wanted that opportunity to die at home. But where's the province on this? Because I mean, there's funding coming to some extent, but when you think of the high cost of keeping someone in hospital at end of life compared to, as your illustration demonstrated, 10% cost of caring for them in their home. Yeah, you're forced to go out there and try to string together funding from a variety of sources to make this work. And I'm guessing there's probably, I don't know, 600, 700, 800 people a year who die in Lanark County.
Yeah.
And so let's say if that's 2 a day, roughly, why not? I mean, where's the province trying to provide the overall level of care people would like to see at end of life and the options that people would prefer?
Peter?
Put you on the spot.
No, so, I mean, that is one of the reasons they are very slow coming on this. And actually with the whole change in the Ontario Health teams and then the Ontario Health East now, we're now part of we were part of a Southeast Regional Palliative Care Network. Now it's called the Southeast Sub-Regional Palliative Care Network. So there seems to be more levels of dare I say, bureaucracy happening than less. However, we have a very good rapport with Ontario Health East. And so they are very supportive of a community-led initiative. They want to see the business case. They want to see that the community is behind it, and then they're ready to support it. But it's still the same old funding. It's still only the $155,000 funding per bed, and the actual cost per bed would be double that. So the rest is still having to come from the community grants and foundations.
Well, thank you. I think it's an incredibly important initiative.
Yeah.
I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. I hope I answered. I didn't really answer. I kind of commiserated with you.
1% of the population die every year. So that's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
other questions or comments? Thank you, Anne. There's so much to talk about here.
Yeah.
And
Mr. Chair?
yes, Councillor Bryan. No,
Yeah.
jump in.
No, thank you. Thank you, Anne, for that presentation. I am 100% behind hospice care. I think it's so very, very important. I noticed you had the support of our local MPP, John Jordan, who is the parliamentary assistant to long-term care. So I encourage you to continue lobbying the province, because I agree with the mayor. This is very important. I think the province could step up and help out here, because benefits them in the long term, but it benefits the people of Ontario in the long term. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Yes, it is very important. Actually, we have a meeting set up to go for it again with John Jordan. I mean, he's a big supporter, but it will take constant advocacy.
I'll just add one more comment, if I may. As the chair, I have the prerogative. Unfortunately, every hospice and palliative care service in Ontario has been bottom up. It's been grassroots. It's never really worked from the top down. It's something that they reluctantly were, not just this particular government, every different type of government has been pushed into it and prodded into it. And when they do fund it, they don't fund it all. Communities have always, in Ontario and Canada, had to do the fundraising and all the work. Mostly women who are caregivers are doing all this work for free. So it's very unfortunate, but there's a terrific group. I've been out to those meetings. I would say that your group has done more in 18 months than, and I understood COVID got in the way, but you did more in 18 months than in the last 5 years what happened. And you've moved this forward so rapidly, and I'm thrilled. You're in a funny spot. Tonight we're really close to finalizing our budget. But you've set the table, maybe not for this year, but for next year. We do support our local hospital, as do the other municipalities. So it's not, it wouldn't be precedent setting. There is another complicating factor, and I don't want to end on a sour note, but municipalities are putting about $4 billion a year in Ontario into services that technically should be funded by the province.
Yes.
So we're at a really a breaking point where we're asking the province for a conversation on a new funding arrangement and wanting to have that conversation with them. And we'd like to have that in 2024. So I'm not optimistic for municipal funding, but I know that there may be many other ways that we could help, and I'll certainly look to those. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Keep up the work, and I will continue to be, as Councillor Brennan, and I'm sure the rest of my colleagues, are big supporters.
Great. Appreciate the support very much. And there are precedents of municipalities.
Yes.
I can send you those. But I appreciate the difficulty and all that you're juggling as well. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We have no CAO directors reports, no committee of the whole consent reports. And for those in the audience, I'm just going to ask you to bear with us. We are going to go in camera, and we'll be back as quick as I can. So at this time, the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls is provided in Section 239 of the Municipal Act as amended. Move into closed session at 5:22 to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals. Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Miller. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. So please, we'll be back. Appreciate your patience.
The EV Charge-On program funded through the province, through MTO, has been announced as of the fall back in October for municipalities to apply for funding for EV charging stations. So we look at the application, they're suggesting that municipalities apply, and they can apply for more than one particular site, and each site being a dedicated project. And no limitations on how many sites you can apply for. They'll fund the purchase, installation, upgrades, et cetera, to the tune of 75% of project costs, but there's a cap on those costs. For instance, for a level 2 charger, like a 19 kilowatt charger, those would be the wall packs or the ones that you see on pedestals. They cap out at 75% funding to a total of $7,500 per port. So why that's important, and the different level 3 charging stations have different amounts that they'll fund as well. For instance, the level 3 charger, they range from $22,500 to $150,000, depending on the amount of kilowatts that the charger is putting out. But we come to find out when we started doing the analysis that it's the funding is great, but it doesn't cover all of the costs. 75% sounds really good, but it's not 75% of your total project costs. It's 75% up to a particular cap. So originally we were looking at the Market Street parking lot for a couple of level 3 chargers down there, the Town Hall parking lot with a level 3 and a level 2, and then the municipal complex at the youth arena for some level 2 chargers there. When we did the math, it turns out that that we would be funding the total project to the tune of about $422,000 of town costs, and that's over and above the funding that we would get from EV Charge-On. And again, those costs are representative of purchasing the chargers, the electrical installation with putting transformers in, switchgear, meters, etc., and upgrades with Hydro One. So when we looked at it, we didn't think council would really be amenable to those types of costs, especially this year with budget being relatively tight. So we scaled that back, and we're looking at council to endorse an application for EV Charge-On program. The grant closes at the end of the month on January 31st, so we've got a couple of days. We're well poised. We've got it pretty well finalized. We just need council's endorsement to proceed with the application. At this point, we're just looking at an application for the youth arena to put 4 level 2 chargers in at that location. With that, everything's in the report. Trusting everybody had a chance to look at it, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions, comments? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. More of a comment than anything else. I support staff's recommendation. We definitely need more publicly available chargers in town. So you got my support.
Mayor Panko?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's a good start, and obviously having one at the arena sites is important. With tournaments going on there all the time, or people visiting all the time, I think it just makes a lot of sense. Level 2 probably is fair for someone who's going to be there for multiple hours. I'd like to see sort of that multi-year approach, and obviously attracting grants in future years to be able to put some here in the marketplace parking lot and eventually other municipal sites around town. Because I think as time goes by, the demand is growing. Level 3 is ideal, but based on the cost, I think sort of the recommendation today is fair. So I'll support that. But again, just like to see if that multi-year phase approach where we sort of make that plan to do something every year for a number of years so we get to where we need to be.
Councillor Miller?
Thank you, and thanks for this. Thanks for watching out for funding opportunities. I support your application for funding. It's great for the environment, which is part of our vision, but I also think from an economic development and tourism perspective, it's really critical, and I would have picked the Market Street location as the place to start. If you're parked downtown for a few hours, you can shop, you can eat in our restaurants. So Mayor Panko's comments about doing a multi-year approach might be wise, and perhaps Market Street could be next.
Anything, Councillor Quinn, go ahead.
I support this, and I think it's I think it's great that we're just starting with this, and I agree with the mayor. Let's start next year. Let's see what we can do. Let's see how much demand there is. And I know if it was on Market Street, people could enjoy the restaurants and whatnot. But if it's at the youth arena, we'll just get them upstairs in the arena on the walking track or something similar to that. Anyways, great report, and I support this thing.
It sounds like you have a lot of support. My question was around ongoing maintenance costs or the life span of the product.
Yeah, I think the chargers themselves, you would think they would have a longer lifespan than what they currently do. That's anywhere between 5 and 10 years. So there are maintenance agreements that you can sign on with third-party contractors for, you have that arrangement with the municipality and those particular contractors, if you will, that they can manage the site, they'll look after maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a cost to that. And I should note too that with this grant, there is an anticipated, ZFIP is the acronym. It's the Zero Emissions Vehicle Infrastructure Program put on by the federal government. It comes out in late spring with announcements for award in the summer. So that particular funding doesn't align with the EV Charge On because it's closes in 2 days with announcements coming in the spring. And I'd just like to note too that to your point, Councillor Quinn, that we've done a lot of the legwork to date, anticipating that we were going to apply for all 3 locations. But once pricing started to come in from Hydro and our electrical contractor that's been working on some estimates, we weren't comfortable, myself and CAO Morrison, bringing a report to council recommending the 3 locations. But the legwork's been done. So in the future, we can apply if we're looking at those 2 sites being Market Street and Town Hall.
So just getting back to the operating annual, is that something you could absorb in your budget, your operating budget? Or you never gave me a price on what the annual costs are for keeping this system?
Yeah, so there'll be, we haven't really done a full analysis of the operating costs. What I will say is we have been in consultation with the City of Ottawa, so they have a strategy there for implementing EV charging stations throughout their municipality. What they commented on to date is they're seeing about 6% use at their sites for level 3 chargers. You would think it would be more, but it's about 6%. And their level 3 chargers between 10 and 20% site dependent. So the usage is still quite low, but that makes sense because there's not a whole lot of EV vehicles on the roads in this particular region. You go to Toronto, there's lots, but down this way, I presume there's less. But there will be operating costs, and I would suggest that now and for the foreseeable future, it's not going to be a revenue generating exercise for municipalities to put these chargers in. There will be ongoing maintenance costs.
Perhaps in the future, we could know what those are.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have consensus that, CO Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think between the time we apply, there's a bit of a compressed time frame to submit the application, and before we get a response, we could bring back the operating costs and have a discussion about what they could predictably be based on some assumptions around usage. There is a revenue generating element to this as well. There's a cost to use them, so we can do some analysis and bring that back before we make the purchase decision.
Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, sorry. I support the recommendation, and what CEO Morris just mentioned is a revenue generating. So, and I did read the report. I might have missed it, but is there a cost for people to use these?
Sorry, just that last part. Is there a cost for
users?
Yes. Yes, there is.
Okay.
All right. And more details will come, but we want to get this grant in, and you've got full support.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
So on to Mr. Dickey and the 2024 second draft budget report. And I know that there's a PowerPoint presentation along with this. I do want to start by thanking all of the staff for moving the marker on this budget as far as you have. It's terrific. It does, and it will make our jobs much easier tonight. I think I'd like to think we're within striking distance of finalizing the budget. And as I understand it, would prefer questions if you've got them in real time, because there's a lot of slides.
Yes.
To ask them. So council, if something comes up, ask it in real time. Of course, if we can do it later too, but that was Mr. Dickey's preference. All yours, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, council. Yes, just an overview. As you remember, the December version had about 830,000 shortfall in the operating budget. So staff have taken the direction from council from our last meeting, and also reviewed the operating lines kind of much more detail, trying to find anywhere we could to kind of reduce that gap, trying to get close as we could to the 2.9% that council was giving us direction for, and also at the same time not wanting to, or assuming we're not wanting to reduce services at this stage. So we're tried to balance those things through a number of things, and we'll go through that detailed list in a couple of slides if that's okay, and kind of what the specific items were. As on capital as well, the same idea. I think what we're thinking of, staff was, again, taking direction and comments from the last meeting and considering those, as well as looking at realizing there's a big project coming up with requiring a lot of, maybe 17 million of funding in the next few years for the big project. So kind of our take was, let's try to find something for council that doesn't incur additional debt on top of that at least for the foreseeable future, knowing what we know now. So that was kind of our, so we found a few $1 million out of the capital to bring it down, and tried to come up with a funding plan that would be able to fund it without any additional debt beyond what was required for the tower and the main. There were a couple of new projects added as well, out of the EV chargers, as Director Muntz spoke about, as well as the melt pit repairs that were talked about, I think, at the last meeting. So. Slides 3 and 4, just a snapshot of the new numbers, showing 830 last time and at a high level by department, and then now down to the 116. So we brought it with the work on the operating, we brought down about 700,000 to try to get as close as we could to balancing it with our efforts. And slides 5 and 6, so these are the ones I think we took a look at every detailed change and just listed them out and kind of what they are. So slide 5 is on the revenue side. These are the changes. Just highlight a couple of them just while and we'll take questions if that's okay on any specific ones. Is the tax levy, we didn't change any assumptions, but there was, when we did the first draft in December, we had not received the final assessment roll for 2024 at that point. So there were a few minor changes. So that's where the 22,000 came from. And the other kind of larger, apart from the funding from reserves, the other kind of more large ones, we have had growth in water connections in the last year or two. So we took a look at, the utilities department took a look at kind of new hookups last year. We kind of made an assumption we build those into our base. You could expect some extra revenue from those in addition to the rates that are built in. So those are two of the changes. And I think the rest of them I've kind of given a brief explanation of kind of the source of them. So if through the chair, if there's questions on the revenue side, myself or the staff that are here will do our best to answer.
Anything on the revenue? Okay, we'll keep going then.
Okay. Slide 6, the cost adjustments. So just highlighting a couple of things here. Again, one of the larger things we did was we did look at deferring new hires. We have new hires in there for January 1st for the most part in the first draft. Given they won't be here for January 1st, we've kind of delayed starts. In most cases, May 1st. I think one is April 1st, to try to buy us some room this year, because the rest of that cost will come in next year as they're here for a full year next year, but it's probably more realistic for this year that they'll be delayed coming into place. And I think one of the things we missed on the first draft is I think the planning department had been in touch with I think the previous director looking at the new CIP program, and we had not considered the tax incentive grant that had been approved. We had not had those built into our models. So subsequent to the last one, I realized that. So we built that in. That we know there's one payment for 2024, which is now built in. That's $89,000. So it's significant, but we wanted to get that in. And then the health unit came with a change, kind of a late. They had a little error in their first draft that they sent us, so they've updated their levy requirements. So that's something that was given to us after the first draft. And then again, there's some one-time funding from reserves for one-time items, some delays, and then the compensation review, which is looking for funding to help us in this first year. So those are some of the highlights. So again, through the chair, if there's questions on the specific items.
I had one on the deferral on the hiring dates, which makes sense. And then the compensation review, the salaries for the new hires, do they reflect the compensation recommendations, or those were as of 2023 dollars? Through the chair, we did not have the compensation numbers in when we built these models back in the fall. So I would say they would not include adjustments for anything that came out of the review. So it's not counted twice. It's in the compensation money is there for that adjustment later on. Okay. Anything else on this page? Questions, comments? Okay, great. Keep moving, please.
Okay, page 7. So looking at the capital, as mentioned, we had about over 5 million of reductions. So just looking at the utilities, the couple of biggest changes there, one being the trunk upgrade. I think what we did is when we relooked at this, we had some money carried over from the previous year that was approved budget already. So rather than adding a new 5 million in this year, which I think was there initially, we looked at what was carried forward plus new additions this year to make it a total of 5 million. We thought that's probably the right number. That's probably the capacity we would have, or the likely projected spend this year. So we just we adjusted that one. And then the water meter, we talked about the water meter replacement, and council, we took direction that I think we're going to do an IT review of our programs and try to look at a holistic, before we piecemeal buy new meters, take a look at that. So I think between water and wastewater, we've removed most of that 1.5 million. We've left in some meters for the larger new industrial and commercial ones in there that we will need anyway, but it's not a wholesale replacement. It's just ones that we think we'll need for regular business in 2024.
Looks like we have a couple of questions already.
Sure.
If you're comfortable,
Yep.
Councilor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dickey, and thanks for sticking with us through this process. We've appreciated all your help, and I know we're not quite done yet, but just wanted to let you know that we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
I have a few questions. I'll throw out a couple now and maybe more later as we go on. We got a lot of public input. I was really pleased with all the responses to our survey online. I think that number of responses shows that our community is very engaged. A lot of it was general feedback for us, which I appreciated. Was there anything that we were able to incorporate in the second draft of the budget that we should point out? Perhaps CAO Morris wants to answer that.
Please, CAO Morris.
Yeah, great question. And so through the chair, if you look at the satisfaction levels, there's 49% of respondents are either really satisfied or satisfied. 34 were undecided or were neutral. So that leaves about 17% that were dissatisfied. So I think those numbers are strong. There's room for improvement. I'd like to see those go up considerably. But in terms of themes, if you go through the comments, there's some really insightful comments there, and there are a few themes that came out. Several thought a pool is something that we should offer as a recreation service. So food for thought. There's nothing in the budget for that, but food for thought. Some comments about snow clearing, more operational, I think, than not really budgetary impacts at this point. Some really good comments about investing in infrastructure. I was really pleased to see that people understand the importance of investing in infrastructure. I think our capital budget reflects a commitment on the part of council for infrastructure renewal. Some other operational things, property standards came up a couple times, so we don't at this point believe we need to add to the property standards budget. We would like to engage with the people that made that comment to understand specifically, and I'm not sure we're able to do that. I think it was anonymous, but nonetheless, that's good insight that we need to keep focusing on property standards. Sidewalk conditions came up several times, not the snow clearing, but the condition of the actual piece of infrastructure. So Mr. McMunn has a plan. He's invested last year, the budget increased to help with that. It's a significant budget again this year, $775,000 for part of that are for sidewalks. So I think we're paying attention to that. Green space preservation came up. So that's not a budgetary impact, but it certainly is a planning impact. So we need to pay more attention to that. And certainly Carl and Stephanie are working on that. Some of the things that people were dissatisfied or at least commented on costs, water came up several times. Policing services came up as a high cost. The other one that I was really delighted to see was the desire to move to a user pay for waste and recycling. So recycling is now producer pay. I think there's a case to be made to get waste collection and disposal off the tax base and make it user pay. Again, Director McMunn has monies to do a waste study. So I would say we're going to act on that. At least we're going to look at it. And some of the other stuff, winter maintenance on parks and trails, we haven't embedded money in the budget, but that's something we are going to look at. The level of service that we provide in parks, the one right beside this building would be a really good example. So I would say there's about 12 or 14 themes that I picked up from the comments. We didn't change the budget, but I think it will inform how we spend the budget that we're proposing to you this evening.
Thank you very much.
Do you have another?
I think that's it for now.
Councillor Quinn.
Through the chair, Sayo, thank you for your comments about this. And I was very pleased to see the number of people that responded. And you know what? Let's keep that kind of thing going, because that's really good for people to have their input. And it's just like a pool, okay? Can we have a pool? People have to understand how much money it takes to build a pool, but then to maintain it. But at least they're asking, so we can answer that question. I thought those comments were great, and I love to have the public making comments and being part of our whole town and how we run it. So I was very pleased with that. So thank you for.
We're going to keep a focus on the capital adjustments, but just before we leave the survey, perhaps make sure we can look at how we ask the questions. There was a little bit of feedback saying, tell us your 5 priorities, and you have police and fire. I said, well, we're not going to mess with police and fire, so don't put that in. There's things we have more flexibility. So I think we could ask that differently next year. So back to you, Mr. Dickey, on the capital adjustments continued.
Okay, so we can move on to the tax supported. Is that okay?
Sure. What slide are you at?
Number 8.
Number 8, okay.
So just, yeah, so number, I think we when we talked about this after the last meeting, I think the CEO noted that we did have a lot of projects. So I think when the team looked at it, one of the goals was to try to reduce the number of projects as well as the cost, just to simply be able to have the capacity, both financial and people capacity to do them. So we have deferred a number of them. And I think what else? Is there anything of significance here? I think, yeah, so I think some of these were directed from the last meeting, and some of them were just proposals that staff, based on our discussion, based on trying to find ways to get the budget down to where we could fund it. or just options that staff have presented here for council to consider.
Okay, Councillor Miller.
Thank you. When you said the word capacity, Mr. Dickey, it kind of struck me a little bit. I'm glad to have that conversation where we can only do what our staff can handle and we don't want to burn anybody out. In a couple of places on our capital budget, we say use in-house resources, particularly around our community services department. And I guess my question really is a broad one. Do we have the internal capacity to bring those things in-house versus hiring them out?
CEO Morse.
Yeah, I would, through the chair, I would say we do. Ms. Clark has been looking at internal capacities and building that capacity up, particularly in the areas of facilities maintenance. So things like the pumps for the in Centennial Park for the ponds. So, the pumps are old, that you can't replace them, but instead of replacing them, which was the intent in the original version, we're now transitioning or pivoting to rebuilding the pumps instead of replacing them. So that's something that our staff could remove the pump, take it to a shop and have it done. So I would say generally, yes, we're building more capacity within community services to do some of these things.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, and thank you, Stephen, for all your work and for providing me with some information today about the debt, which I think was very useful. Just a comment on the adjustments on the capital adjustments, and I just want to say that I'm disappointed that we've taken out Marguerite Street. This is the second year it's been deferred. And I think that showed up in the comments that we got on the budget survey, and I sympathize with those people on Marguerite that feel they're being treated differently and paying probably one of the higher rates in taxes in town. So that's I hope council will keep that in mind for next year. And I know that we had talked about. When it was deferred last year, that we at least do some of the preliminary work, and I understand that's been done, so it should be shovel ready. The other question that I had was on one of the, and I don't have your slide presentation up, but I do have the report up in front of me. The Beckwith Street New Lock pedestrian structure is listed at 650K, and then it's really going to be 10% of that we're paying, I think, from the upper tier is going to be contributing to that. So is that 650 part of the total, or is it the net amount? Just so I understand.
On the Beckwith Street, is that the bridge work?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are
The
you?
new lock pedestrian structure here.
Sorry, through the chair, what's the specific question?
So, Councillor Brennan, I think it's, go ahead.
Yeah, it's listed at in the blue at 650, and then finance or the grants are 585. So is that part? It's the net of that is in your total for capital, right?
Yes, I think in the first through the chair, sorry, our first draft, I think we inadvertently just put the total project at the 65, just our share of it, as opposed to demonstrating the full project. So the net is still the same. Our net share is still the same as the first draft. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Great question, Councillor Brennan. Thank you. Anyone else before we move on? Okay. Thank you. Keep rolling, please.
Okay. So page 9, slide 9 is just, again, just at a high level showing the kind of the current funding plan based on the current draft that we've got it down to a little over 13 million total. So through utilities, just these are the grants For these, this plan, we've got the grants that we kind of know of or we're pretty sure of. If ones that are unknown or we haven't applied for, we haven't included them. So we've included them as reserve at this point or debt, where we don't have enough, where we're not sure. Hopefully some of those will gain in the future and be able to reduce the share that the town provides. So just quickly looking at this. So through the utilities, I think there is enough fund balances in the water and wastewater capital reserves to be able to fund that portion of the 2024 capital budget with some left over in both reserves. Tax supported capital, there's not the $3.5 million needed. So as mentioned in the report, we're about $1.5 million short by the time we put this year's contribution in and take what's there now. So and as mentioned, we do have we've been reviewing another reserve that we had set up for assessment at risk a little while back for some major appeals were out there. Just so we put some money aside in recent years. So based on the current conditions and a review by the CAO and the last treasurer, we've deemed we don't need that full I think it's about 2.6 million. So there is we estimate right now we probably should leave about 600,000 there for current appeals outstanding. So there's about $2 million. That's something that we've been talking about, kind of what to do with. So this is a place we could transfer that 1.5 over to cover the shortfall for the tax supported. Now leaves us with no reserves at the end of the year no capital reserves pending 2023 year-end results. But it does fully fund the 2024 budget that's been included.
And later on, you'll be talking in more detail about how you mitigate or how we're going to actually, I mean, you touch on it here, but there'll be a better or more detailed summary a little later on where we talk about taxes and the funding.
Oh, the options.
Yeah, the options.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, I think we talked about debt a bit. The council asked about debt a little bit at the last meeting. So I did take a look at the current debt service. And slide 10 is just a look at, we talked about limits and that sort of thing, which I think is helpful. This will become even more helpful as the long-term financial plans are updated this year for both utilities and for tax-supported capital to be able to really get a good look at kind of the next 10 years, what kind of capital program is needed and get those updated. But for now, the red line is the 25% of our annual revenue estimate from the province as kind of our legislated limit or cap on annual spend on principal and interest. The green line, I think council did set a $2 million limit several years ago. So what I've done, again, this isn't no direction on this, but I've just taken that $2 million from 2016 or 17 and just escalated at 2% a year to say, 7 years later, it's likely going to be around here. So I've escalated 2% a year just to give an idea of what an internal cap would be that council had previously said, just give an idea of that. So our current debt service, we're currently at the end of 2023, have about $15 million in debt. And our current debt service, we're reducing it by about $1 million a year, roughly, through our payments. So as you can see, the town is well below the internal limit with no new with existing and past debt that's been approved at this point.
Are there any questions on that? That's a very good graph. I hope the public are able to pick that up. Mayor Penko.
I guess the only part missing there is that if you go back 10 years ago, the debt servicing was considerably higher. If you go back 10 years ago, the debt servicing and the debt was considerably higher. So we've been able to retire loans and avoid borrowing to put us in a position where we are today to at least have the capacity should we need it in the next couple of years, especially with a couple of major projects such as the water tower trunk line and of course George Street. And even though there may be grant funding available for those types of projects, there's no certainty at this stage. And we're committed to the projects. We need to go ahead. We'll, of course, I'm sure staff will do all they can to get any grant funding we're entitled to, but again, no certainty at this stage.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Oh, Councillor Brennan.
Thanks. And yeah, I agree with the mayor. Like it was a different story 10 years ago, but saying that, we should remember that we encountered some major projects, i.e. the arena, the water treatment plant, and things like that. And we're able to actually build, I don't know, the water treatment plant was $37 million, I'm guessing, and we leveraged upper tier money. So the borrowing was well done. And same with the arena, $11 million arena, we paid a fraction of it, and we had to take a loan out for it. So, as we go forward, we're in a great position to do another major project, i.e. the water tower. The only question I had about the debt, and thank you for sending me the list and council the list of what the debt is. The arena's included in it, the water treatment plant, and that sort of thing. There's several smaller ones, and I know they're coming due this year, but is there any opportunity to pay some of this off now? I was looking at it, and there was one the restructured loan for the WPCP. It's at $90,000 now, and it doesn't come due until 2033. Does that make any sense, or are there penalties involved when we try to take care of that now?
Through the chair, typically once you've set up a loan, long-term loan, my experience is you typically don't want to cash it early. You don't want to. So I guess you can pay. I guess when you have new projects coming, where we're going out for funding, that would be the time to see if there's another source of funding. I think we've talked about borrowing from other reserve funds temporarily, like as happened with the building reserve in the past. And there will be a financing coming up. I believe it's one of the big projects. I think it's the town hall project, where we finished that through the course of the year, and there was about $500,000 approved for debt for that one. So that might be something that rather than going out to the market, council could consider using. Because the building reserve, it has gone up. It went up since the last time we talked, based on 2022 final results, to over $1.5 million. And there's a streetlight loan still outstanding, but something like that would be a chance where you could take a $500,000 loan out and not have to go to the market. And that way you're more flexible if you want to pay it off early, if you have other sources of funding, that sort of thing.
But your answer was you don't really like to pay off small if you can help it. And I'm sure there's good reasons for that. C.O. Morris?
Yeah, we looked at this several years ago, and we found it's punitive to get out of a loan, prohibitively punitive to get out of a loan. So I think going forward, Mr. Dickey's suggesting perhaps there's more opportunity to borrow from ourselves and get away from commercial rates.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions. You want to slide 11 now? Bring us.
Through the chair. So 11 is we've worked with the Director of Public Works. So we've just tried to think. We know this big project is beginning, and I think at this point, $9.8 million for the tower and about $15 million for the trunk main. At this point, estimated for a 3-year project. So we took a look at what the funding requirements might be for that and what it would do to our debt service. And we also did talk to our DC consultant to take a look at what could be eligible for development charges. So we have factored that in. Now, we don't have all these funds in place yet on development charges, but in the course of time we may. And then you'll see from this, we do have additional debt of $5 million for the tower and about 12 3/4 for the trunk main over barring any other changes or any other grant funding. We could be as high as 17 million of additional grant loans required to pay for those projects. Any questions on that slide, that schedule?
Just a comment that the Bank of Canada is talking about interest rate reductions over the course of this year.
That'd be good.
Maybe by the time we get there.
Yeah, it'll be a couple of years away. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be great. That would be very helpful.
That would be very helpful.
And then slide.
Oh, excuse me, C.O. Morris.
I just want to take this opportunity to comment, and I'm probably preaching to the choir, but this is the perfect example of why the current funding model for municipalities based on real property taxes doesn't work. when we get into large infrastructure projects. So I think the data that Mr. Dickey has prepared is a really good justification for why we need funding. A funding program opened up earlier today, and Mr. McMunn's working on an application for this particular project, the Housing Enabling Fund. But clearly the local property tax payer is really constrained for paying for these very large scale projects. So the next meeting, I'm going to bring forward and have a discussion about the work that AMO is doing to encourage the province to start a discussion about changing a centuries-old model of funding municipalities and looking at it somewhat differently. So we'll be looking for council support to advocate for a different method of paying for municipal services. And this is the textbook example.
I agree. Thank you. Good comment. Back to you, Mr. Dickey.
So factoring that presumably worst case scenario for debt requirements for this large project, the next slide is kind of what it would look like without adding more debt in for other projects, kind of just simply adding in an estimated timeline. If we finish those projects the next 2 to 3 years, but by the time we start making payments on the debt in 27 and 28, you'll see, just to see what that does as compared to your, again, worst case scenario. And it does get you up to kind of your internal limit by 27. So just, so even without large debt, that's at 5% interest. Again, it's 30-year debt at this point, the assumptions built in, and hopefully interest maybe is better by the time we get there, and hopefully this other grant funding has, helps to reduce the level. But anyway, just thinking ahead for a few years, this is just get an idea of the indication of what this kind of a debt burden would do to future payments.
Just to clarify, that particular slide, the debt burden you're referring to, is that just the water tower project, or is that all debt, including the water tower?
It's all.
Okay, thank you.
It's all projects.
Great. CEO Morse?
But just to clarify, no new debt other than the water tower.
Yeah, no new, yes, the debt that we currently have.
Correct.
Plus the water tower.
So if, for instance, we had to invest in a large way in our arena, that's one example, and we'll be talking more about that. That's not included in this analysis.
Right. This is what we know.
This is what we know today.
Wish list.
Yeah.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. But even assuming if, interest rate was 5%, we're not above our self-imposed limit for very long,
No.
according to this. So I mean, I think we're in pretty good shape in terms of debt sustainability. So that's the only comment I have.
Okay. Mayor Panko.
Yeah, but to CEO Morse's point, though, I mean, it would take our debt servicing from somewhere around $1.5 million a year to 2.6, 2.7 in a matter of a few years. So the impact that would have on our ability to do capital work, or the burden we'd have to place on our taxpayers, that was, I say it was $1.2 million increase over a couple of years. I mean, that's a significant increase on taxes. So all the more important again for the grants to make that difference, which again, we're entitled to that from the province. As I said, they're really their responsibility more than it is ours.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions, so we'll keep plugging along.
Thank you, through the chair. The next few slides are just to highlight I think the CEO Morris spoke to the public consultation. So just stuck some of these. I'm not sure. I didn't have any really comments to speak to them in this presentation, but they're in there just in case council wanted to ask further questions or of staff. The next few pages are just kind of the graphs that came out, high level summary of the results.
So as you go to your recommendations, I'm going to look to council to see if they would like to have the information from the Economic Development Tourism Budget Summary before they have the bigger discussion, or would you like to actually start to tackle the budget recommendations that we have in this slide here? You can see what I'm saying is we might have more information after hearing from Ms. Crowder on.
I'm fine pausing this and moving on to that again.
just pause this. Are you able to hang in there with us for?
Oh, sure.
This is kind of your night.
Oh, it's fun.
And,
Sure.
oh, I'm sorry, if I did that, oh, that is part of this, okay. Let's do it. I'm gonna get to that police cruiser really quick after this.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of council. So unfortunately, I wasn't here during the first draft of the budget, so I apologize, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to follow up and present at this stage, as well as address the requests from the Chamber of Commerce for visitor information services, as well as marina services, and their requests for an increase, as well as the budget for Old Home Week. So that's what I'll be presenting today. There are two minor adjustments or errors within the calculation, so I'll address those when we get to them. There was a lot of numbers back and forth over many, many days, so I apologize for those errors. So the first slide just gives an idea of what we do, our key services and activities within economic development, tourism, culture, heritage, and corporate communications. The next slide is our 2024 work plan. A lot of this is ongoing work that the department already does, which is already part of staff works plans, as well as some new stuff that we're looking at doing in 2024. A number of those are, Center Street, which is a large project. We're looking at a new BRE and investment attraction strategic plan as part of council's strategic plan. So that's a big one that will take up a lot of time this year as well as moving forward.
And would you like questions on each slide or wait till the end? Do you have a preference?
Doesn't matter if there's questions per slide.
Yeah, it worked fairly well last time, so that's slide 4, the work plan. I just wondered, a lot of this would be built off of the strategic plan, the 4 years. A lot of this working planning for 2024 comes right out of the strategic plan as well.
Council's previous strategic plan, as well as a number of new initiatives that we started as a department, as we started to be able to grow as a department and have capacity, increase staffing. Some of those ongoing things is like the annual visitor survey, which wasn't done in the past, our annual BRE survey, which wasn't done in the past, our new volunteer program, which is coming up, corporate communications, again, increased significantly since we've been here. But there'll be new and ongoing stuff moving forward once we get into the new BRE investment attraction strategic plan, which will require more capacity for staff in that area as well as for the manager.
Any questions on this particular slide under the 2024 work planning? Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Manager Crowder. So on the BRE survey, a number of years ago, I know we did one in partnership with the county, and I think you did one last year as well. So how often do you think that those require?
Be done.
How often should they be done?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. So the BRE survey that was done in partnership with Valley Heartland and the county, that's through OMAFRA, and usually those are done about 5 years, every 5 years. It's a really intense high-level survey. There's about 100 questions. It takes an hour and a half to 2 hours to do, so it's very time-intensive, but it does collect really good information, which is also shared with the province, being through OMAFRA. The one that we're doing annually is an annual survey. And it's not just about collecting data, it's about keeping those relationships with our business owners. So it gives us a touch point every year that can be expected by our businesses to collect data, important data about workforce development, about their struggles, their successes. So it's not just data gathering, it's also it's also relationship building. And I think our businesses appreciate that. So that it usually takes about 2 months to do. It's a lot of calling again. It's a lot of emails and questions, but it also gives us an opportunity to have a discussion with our businesses in a formal manner.
Just a follow-up,
Yeah,
Mr.
please.
Chair. So just further to that, if you don't mind, you are quoting that you will do a BRE and business attraction strategic plan. Would that be similar to an active and tourism overall strategy?
It's similar minus the tourism aspect. So it's really focused on, and this is the direction from council as part of your strategic plan, that an investment attraction and BR&E strategic plan be developed, or a plan. So it really focuses more on the industrial side, investment attraction and business retention, rather than tourism. Tourism is a whole different thing. I think it is valuable, and that's one of the reasons why we decided to engage in a visitor survey, so we can start collecting data to look at where we are in tourism and how to grow, and asset development and things that we need to improve in tourism as well.
Thank you. So that was slide 4, and ready to go on to the next one.
Next slide. So this is where one of the minor changes are. So it's the very last under reasons for budgetary increase. That should be adjusted to $58,038 rather than the $63,038. So there's a $2,000 error there. And that was just in rounding and moving stuff around. So capital budget requests, there's $50,000. That's the unfortunate replacement of the Movies Under the Star trailer that was taken from Heritage House this year. We did an estimation, and it's about $50,000 to replace the trailer and all of the equipment within that. The project budget, so $50,000 for the development of the BR&E and investment attraction plan, and then $33,000 in legal and appraisal fees, and those are related to a number of different projects, like the water treatment plant and some other things that we're working on as staff. So costs for lawyers and appraisals and that kind of stuff. This is a one-time request, and that's why it's not coming in the operational, but it's funded out of the rate stabilization reserve. Same with the development of the BR&E survey. Operational changes. So as you can see, last year we had a total budget just under $800,000. This year we're looking at a total budget of $873,000. So there's a total increase of $81,000, and that has to do with some regular inflation costs, cost of living increases, HR costs, those types of things, as well as a new seasonal staff and minor operational increases for Heritage House. And the biggest is in ECDEV tourism and the comm budget, which is the increase for marina services for the chamber. So we've already included in this cost $13,000 that staff is proposing in a few slides over there, and as well as a new full-time culture and tourism coordinator to take on that service delivery, because currently the manager of economic development is doing 70% of that. Heritage House staff are doing probably 20 to 30% of that. There's communications is doing some of that. Our ECDEV person is doing some of that as well, and staffing. So we're trying to streamline it again, make sure that we have one qualified person under the town's umbrella that is able to do tourism delivery services for the town of Smith Falls.
Okay, we'll just pause on that slide, and Mayor Panker, you had a question?
Well, yeah, just a comment. The only thing regarding the Movies of the Stars equipment, you were here to mention before, because my business had originally purchased that equipment, it was still insured, fortunately. So, but we don't know the outcome of that. So it should be less than 50,000, but I'm just working through that right now. But whatever the settlement is, will help reduce that cost.
And I guess our friends at the OBP in North Grenville, I found those 2 trailers, one of the missing hours, eh?
We have not gotten no follow-up on that, unfortunately.
But it looked just like ours, or yours. Anything else on slide 5? Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. Just on that, that's what I was wondering, if the trailer was insured, so you have to find that out. Now, we get a new trailer. Where are we going to put it so it's not going to get stolen?
We'll definitely figure that out.
Because this was
Yeah.
difficult.
Thieves are very good at finding
Oh, yeah.
ways.
They are.
Okay, slide 6.
So again, I wanted to give council a breakdown of each division within the department and what the associated costs are for that. So overall operational and oversight, corporate communications, economic and community development, tourism, and Heritage House Museum. And again, the tourism ask includes all of our special events, which used to be in Parks, Recreation, and Community Services. That was moved over. There's also an increase there for powwow. in order to support increased costs of powwow as well as Canada Day. That also includes the new full-time tourism coordinator that's being requested, as well as the $13,000 increase that's being recommended by council for tourism services through the chamber. So if there was no change, if we didn't look at increasing the budget for tourism services, no change would be, we'd still be at 147,000, 48,000 for tourism delivery within the town.
Questions on this slide? Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Sorry, me again.
That's good. That's good.
So you've included a $13,000 increase to the chamber. What we heard pretty clearly was they can't deliver visitor services at the waterfront for that. If they choose to pull out, will the new tourism coordinator step in and work down there, or how will we address that?
That could be an option. We also have a tourism student as well that could go down there. We are still looking at other grants and subsidies for staffing. I think we as the town, we have a good partnership with the chamber and we want to maintain that relationship. They do a great job at the marina every year. So I think the request last year when we were negotiating for a 5-year contract, originally they were looking at 25. We came back at 12,000. They did make revenue this year. Granted, it wasn't a lot of revenue, but they were able to pay all the expenses this year. So the increase of 13,000 would increase what the town is providing for that service to 25,000. And potentially could give them, based on what their numbers were last year in that increase, about 15,000 plus in revenue.
CEO Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to augment Ms. Crowder's comments, so it is the subject of a negotiation right now, and we believe that negotiation is ongoing. So we've embedded in this draft budget what has been offered to the chamber. So if it deviates from that amount, then we would need to adjust the budget. But I would like to add, though, that that council increased the user fees for dockage and pump out services. 100% of that revenue goes to the chamber as the operator of tourism services. So the town is also providing more opportunity to make money at the marina. So I don't want to get into a negotiation today, but I just want you to be aware that as far as we're concerned, that discussion is ongoing.
Okay. Anything else? Mayor Panko.
Do we know how much, based on previous years' dockage and pump out revenues, how much of an increase that will mean for them?
I didn't do, through you, Mr. Chair, I didn't do those calculations, but I believe we raised the pump out rates $10 to $15 per pump out. So that can be significant. I think there's 100 and some pump outs last year.
Morris.
So based on historic volumes, we could work with the chamber to I guess quantify what that'd
be helpful.
Councillor Robbins.
Oh, thanks. I guess it's more a question than anything else. Since last year, the chamber was responsible for providing, toilet tissue, all the stuff that people use on a regular basis. Would they not be eligible to make a profit? Like, they're a nonprofit organization, but they in turn put that back into the community. So I'm just wondering, yeah, they made a small profit, but they had to pay for a whole bunch of stuff really that wasn't their job to do, I would think. Now maybe I'm reading it wrong, but that's just the way I see it. Is that right or not?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I think, they're an organization, not for profit, and you're right, their revenues do help go back into the community. I think, they took on the contract as the manager of operations. So that does include doing maintenance on the building, restocking toilet paper, purchasing toilet paper, putting in light bulbs, those types of things. Again, it's a negotiation. So council and part of the chamber's original request to council was additional funds for operational costs. We're proposing that we give them an extra $13,000 a year or to help offset some of those costs.
As well as the increase in some of those pump out fees, et cetera. So I'm hearing they're a good and valuable partner. The town's still working with them on that, and this is the placeholder for the budget right now. Okay, anything else on this? Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. Just remember, the chamber operated a campground there for many, many years, and that was really their lifeblood. So they've tried to pivot. There was a cantina there last summer. They're really, really committed to bringing people here, keeping them here as tourists. So I know you have another slide, Director, to go through with their proposal, but I really, really hope that we can work constructively with them to make Victoria Park better. And just remember as well that where the campground was, or the trailer area was, is now overrun with weeds. It's forlorn and forgotten. And what a opportunity for us to work with Parks Canada to make it a better place. So hopefully we can work with them and get something done.
Okay, thank you.
I may, I guess, before we move ahead. I guess we heard from the chamber that they need, I think it's 45,000 to provide visitor service down there. And so Manager Crowder, the number, I guess you've increased it from 12 to 25, is that correct? And we know there's going to be an opportunity for increased revenue based on projections. We know there will be an increase. We just don't know how much that will be. But my concern is that's not a known entity, and the chamber's got to make a decision, I assume, fairly soon, if they're going to provide visitor services there. And if they don't have the confidence that they can provide them based on the scenario we have in front of us and their own revenue projections, then there's a possibility they come back to us and say, ask us to figure it out, they'll back away. And we're not talking about a huge amount of money here in order to give them a degree of certainty. And total certainty would be another 20,000, and if they would commit. I assume they would commit to providing visitor services there for this year, if that is the gap. So I know we're still trying to wrestle with $116,000 operating shortfall. We've got some potential scenarios, but in the grand scheme of things, 20,000 is not a huge number to try to provide that certainty of knowing, at least for this year, that this is in place. We know there's going to be negotiations going on between the town and the chamber regarding potential tourism and how this may roll out in the future. But from my comfort level, recognizing the value it brings to that area of the community and the visitors who come through there, including all the voters, I'd be comfortable saying, well, let's give them the certainty at this stage, at least for 2023, of increasing that 13 to 33. And then we know at least for this season, this is in place. And as long as if there's consensus around the horseshoe to take that step, and then staff can work out the other details going forward. And maybe it's a matter of having an audit at the end of the season to say, okay, well, here the revenues are much greater than expected. Maybe the following year is going to be less, but at least for this year, we know that it gives them the confidence of knowing that they can move ahead.
So go ahead, Theo.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to start by saying the chamber did a fantastic job of running it last year, and I think it would be our desire to have them continue to run it because they're very good at it. But I would caution that we have two proposals in front of us, and we need to decouple those proposals so we know how much is for the marina service versus how much is for tourism service. I don't have a level of clarity around that right now. So what I would suggest, I'm looking at Manager Crowder, could this be brought back in 2 weeks with a resolution?
Potentially. I need some additional direction on what exactly you're looking for. I have two options on the next slide. One does detail what the marina services are going to be and what the tourism services are going to be, both for the chamber ask as presented, both in the delegation that they did to council previously and a letter that was sent by the chamber in early January. That kind of outlines their offer. So I can come back if we need a little bit more time and a little bit more information. I'm happy to do that.
I'll jump in just on the mayor's suggestion. I'm not comfortable going ahead and giving money without staff doing the due diligence on what this negotiation costs are. I'd like, and I'll take, when staff come back and have negotiated whatever's fair and reasonable, and they tell me the price, then I'll consider it. But to give the price ahead of that, I found that premature, so I'm
Well,
not.
at least it's a placeholder in the budget.
So I'll look to my colleagues. The mayor is suggesting that the full ask from the chamber be put in as a placeholder. And staff are saying within 2 weeks, there's ongoing discussions. They would have a number, maybe the same, maybe different, come back to us with further information if we want to wait. So I'll just turn, it's not my decision. I would rather wait for staff, or at least until we get to the next slide, and we can pick it back up. While you're thinking about that, why don't we just go to the next slide and then we can come back.
So the next slide, again, gives two options for council's consideration, and this is where the other error had occurred, where it says total new investment. That should be 106,000, not 109,500, sorry. And that total there is based on the chamber's ask. So the full ask, which is the 50,000 for marina services, and then the 56,000 for visitor services. So that's their combined ask. So again, there was a presentation, the delegation done by the executive director from the chamber. There was correspondence between the executive director and I, as well as some verbal conversations just to get the clarification. So I tried to break down for council what the actual ask is. Even though, you know, it looks like it's 106,000, 50 plus the 56,000, we already provide them with 12,000 in visitor services. So the increase for marina services is 38,000, and that's to provide the same level of service that they're already offering at the 13,000. The second one is an increase of 33,500, and that's representing a new coordinator that they're proposing as part of their proposal that would work at the Victoria Park during the high season and then work here at the office during the off season. What wasn't included in the proposal, and these were part of the ongoing conversations that we were having, is with regards to the actual marketing dollars to facilitate and pay for the marketing buys. So the chamber is asking that $23,000 from the current tourism budget be given to them to manage the services. So when we talk about visitor services based on the chamber's proposal, that really only means marketing, tourism marketing. That doesn't include any of the other services. That doesn't include investment development. There's a number of other things that they wouldn't be able to provide that the town would still need resources in order to facilitate. So that doesn't include any of our events. So they wouldn't be looking at doing our events or hosting our events or managing our events or putting our events on. That still would be responsibility of town staff. They wouldn't be able to update our social media or update our website for us. They wouldn't be able to do approvals through our events policy or event approval process. That is a municipal staff would have to be able to do that. We can't have an outside organization doing approvals for events, community events. So the second option, again, it's laid out there. the new investment would be a total of 77,498, but the actual increase to the current tourism budget would be 65,489. So again, that's the 13,000 that I'm proposing that we give to the chamber on top of the 12 that we already have. For a total of 25, and then the cost of a full-time tourism, arts, and culture coordinator. So it's not just tourism, it's also the cultural services as well as some of the arts services that we're trying to accomplish and move forward within the town. And so I did a quick summary of what the duties or tasks that new coordinator would take on. And that includes the cultural plan. There's still aspects of the cultural plan that need to be finished. If we want to do a new tourism strategic plan in the future, there's the public arts master plan that we're still working on. Again, there's all of the marketing coordination and the marketing buys for tourism, working with tourism partners, as well as the approvals of our events, our community events approval process, and the managing of the events policy as well. So a lot of things, we're getting more service to take that initial step and look at a full-time staff complement rather than trying to farm it out to the chamber, which I'm sure they would do a great job, but we would still have to find other resources within the budget and within our staff complement in order to accomplish our goals in tourism growth that we want to do.
Okay. Questions on this slide? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I'm kind of lost it. On tourism service delivery option number 1, you said the revised figure is $106,000. I have a copy of that letter that the chamber sent you in January. And they're suggesting Victoria Park fee for service plus tourism coordinator, and what they're proposing as their responsibilities for $83,500. So I don't understand the discrepancy there.
Sure. I have that letter too.
Yeah.
So,
no, I'm sure you do.
No, so 50,000 would be for marina services. The 33,500 would be for the new coordinator that they're proposing as part of that. And then on top of that, there is $23,000 that they're asking for as part of the current tourism budget for marketing materials. So really, looking at the actual increase to the tourism budget, it would be the $71,500. So on top of what is already in the budget now, there'd be an additional increase of 71.
Does that answer your?
Yeah, because it says right here that they're willing to manage the website and social media accounts and adhere to the town code of conduct for online social media, etc. But you're saying that has to be done by a town employee.
Agree, Mr. Chair. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Councillor Miller.
Just two clarifying questions, if you don't mind. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's my understanding that our communications staff would update those things anyway. Wouldn't that be the case?
They do, through you, Mr. Chair, but the capacity for that and to be able to do better and more tourism marketing, having a full-time complement is going to accomplish that. Right now, our coordinator is really there to manage the administration of the website, not to do content upsite. There is, we have content writers for each department that manage the pages, and right now we have heritage staff and me and other staff doing the microsite for the tourism because we don't have a dedicated resource for tourism at this time.
Follow-up question, Mr.
Please.
Chair. And then my other question was on the arts and culture coordinator. And I think we asked the same question in the first draft, so I'm just clarifying. My memory's not the best. Did we hire an arts and culture coordinator last year?
No, so through you, Mr. Chair, what we did is we had a part-time staff person at Heritage House already. We increased the budget in order to provide a full-time complement, so a second full-time staff at Heritage House. The idea and the hope is that between the two full-time staff, they could run Heritage House as well as do broader tourism, culture, arts tasks and initiatives, and we really just don't have the capacity to that. For that. The department as a whole, we had hundreds of overtime hours just to maintain the level of service that we have. So, you know, it's hard. If we want to continue where we are, we need to look at decreasing services or increasing resources to be able just to maintain what we're doing now. And if we want to get better, and if we want to start planting seeds and doing the things we need to have an even better successful future, that's where we have to make that investment. And that's really what I'm asking for.
You're okay, Councillor Brennan? Seeing you up there?
Yeah, I'm okay. I go back to what I said before about, I got the broader discussion, but Victoria Park, and it needs to be looked after. In my mind, it needs to be looked after by the chamber, and if they can't do it for the extra 13 or whatever, I agree with the mayor. We need to ensure they're there, and let's put a placeholder in the budget for it, and let's have staff continue to work with them. We need them as a partner. We need them as a partner for sure.
So I have a question on the tourism arts, on option 2, service delivery offerings. One is the chamber, one's the town. Do you anticipate, because one of the concerns I had was that having one staff there, do you see this person working for the town working out of that site at all, or being on in the summer months? Or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no. Yeah.
That's fine.
That hasn't. If we're a team with the chamber as well. Last year, we provided our tourism resource to work at the visitor center with the chamber because they were having staffing issues. They didn't get the grant that they needed. So we are able to share resources when need and work as partnerships. But really this tourism person would be a coordinator, and they'd be looking at doing broader town initiatives, not only in tourism, but also in arts and culture as well. So I don't want them sitting down at the visitor center necessarily giving out information.
So the discussion, so we're bringing it back to the mayor's suggestion after we've had this, looked at this slide. And it was, do you want to clarify anything else?
Well, so we had an email from the chamber today, and it indicated that the total ask is the 83.5, not counting the 26,000 whatever from the tourism budget. So there's more work to be done here. I guess is essence what has to happen. So I think we need to clarify some of that, confirm some of that before we make a decision on tourism service going forward. But I still go back to the point, I guess, of, I guess if that was the way we went for tourism service, then it may be able to accomplish it within, without the extra 20,000, I guess. So I think we need that answer before we even look for a placeholder, I guess, to be fair.
So continue your discussions, come back best you can with the budget that you've recommended here. What's the objective? And if it can't be done with that, then, well, you'll have to come back with a different.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I can, I think, whether the chamber delivers the service of the town, there's still a cost. So in terms of holding the budget process up, I wouldn't be too concerned about that. But what we will do is we'll attempt to conclude the negotiations before we bring the third draft back. That's very tight, but I think we just need some, or at least I need some clarity on decoupling the two elements of the chamber's proposal so we can come up with a recommendation for you.
And at least from this council member, I'm trying to find savings. And we've moved the marker on this considerably in the offer. So I'm not a big appetite to grow it more than that, but that's just my personal concern. I think you have another slide. Oh, yes, you do.
So slide number 8 is with regards to Old Home Week. And I know that Chair McKenna was able to forward council some information prior to the meeting, just to give an update on the task force's work so far, and also what their ask includes. So it's fairly straightforward. They've put some funds to some specific tasks. I think the biggest unknown really is those deposits. We know from planning events and executing events that it's imperative to put deposits down in advance in order to hold, and oftentimes that's 15 months to a year in advance of the actual event. We do it every year with Canada Day, with fireworks and those types of things. The challenge is getting that specific number in order to budget for it. They've also have been working within the community. They've received a number of letters of support and are starting their fundraising and sponsorship activities as well. So they're looking at ways to start to fundraise and collect donations in order to support the rest of the event. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
Seeing any? Okay. So thank you very much for your report. We appreciate it. I'm going to bring it back now to the questions that Acting Treasurer Mr. Dickey and the COO brought forward. Council may consider the following options for next steps. Direct staff to incorporate the changes outlined in this report as was presented tonight, with direction as to elimination of the remaining operating budget shortfall from either further transfers from rate stabilization reserves, increase the tax rates of a 0.6%, or by other means. So could we just look at that? I think staff have done a remarkable job in council in getting this budget almost home. One of the options, so that would be 2.9 to 3.5 for a rate increase if council chose to give that direction, so a 0.6% increase. And when we looked around at the other Eastern Ontario partners, the average looks like around 4, some are much higher, some are a little lower. So 3.5 is in the ballpark, so to speak. So I'll just look to see if Councillor Robinson.
I've got a couple of comments concerning that. First off, thanks for the work involved in reducing the first draft budget. In operating, we now only need to find $116,000 to balance the budget. I'm not certain that we can find much more without getting extremely creative. It was suggested that it would require 0.6% additional tax to make up the shortfall. And if I'm not mistaken, that is going to result in 3.5 as Councilor McKenna said. And that would bring us to a balanced budget. I don't want to use the rate stabilization reserve to fund this difference, as it's not really what it was designed for. It's more for one-time costs, and that arise to support. And I don't think we should be using it to support day-to-day operations. On capital, it was reduced by 4.6 million, but I will say there's one thing that I was sad to see going. It was Marguerite Street again, as it was deferred again this year. I'm concerned that deferrals may put us back into not getting projects done in a timely fashion and put us on the same path that got this community into the infrastructure dilemma that we've been trying to climb out of. So I personally think that a 3.5% increase would be reasonable. I looked up the CPI for 2023 from Stats Canada today, and for the year, the average was 3.9. So I'm going to support the 0.6 addition and make it 3.5.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pankin?
Yeah, I think a lot of work by staff to get us to the point we're at tonight. And not that we have to make a decision tonight, but we're narrowing in on that. the 116 shortfall, if we took it from the rate stabilization reserve, our balance in there was much greater than it needed to be. It was there for a purpose. That purpose is sort of behind us. And in the past, if we end up with budgetary surpluses, we want to make sure we have enough money there. We don't, and the rest would go into our capital reserve. And I think we're the point where even if we took the 116 out of there, we still have what, between 900,000 and $1 million probably in the rate stabilization reserve. Is that about 2.5 or 2.6 now?
Through the chair, rate stabilization, the last report that was brought in the fall was just over 3 million, 3.2 million.
Okay, 3.2. Okay, and we're taking 1.5 to help with our capital costs. Is that correct?
No, from that, no, it's the 1.5 was from a different reserve.
Sorry, different reserve. Okay, that's right. So that is the reserve. I guess I'm thinking, sorry, not the rate stabilization reserve. That is our assessment at risk reserve.
That's right. Yeah.
And so we had 2.5, 2.6 in there?
Yeah. 2.6.
Okay, so 2.6, and we're taking 1.5 to put towards our capital budget, leaves about 1.1. And we believe even 600,000 is probably somewhere in that area. We don't know, right? How much do we have at risk? We don't know. But I think that's an excessive amount compared to what we'd normally have in most past years. And I think historically we'd probably have somewhere around $500,000 in that reserve. So we're more than double that amount now. So I would be comfortable drawing from that to look after the 116 rather than increasing by another 0.6 if that's. So I think it still leaves us with roughly $1 million in that reserve, which is almost double what we traditionally have there. In the end, if we don't use it this year, we will probably use it next year towards capital, but it's an opportunity for us to maybe maintain a 2.9 would be my thoughts.
So just want to check with our staff that assumption that the mayor is, the figures of the assumption he's making is accurate. I don't doubt you, just want to double check.
Yeah, I think in broad terms, and Mr. Dickey can correct me if I'm straying. So we have 2.6 in the rate stabilization. We believe we need to maintain 600,000, leaving 2 million. We need 1.5 to keep our tax supported capital reserve in a positive position. So 1.5 would go, leaving 500,000. The ultimate disposition, that money really came, its origin came from, it would have been a transfer to capital reserve originally. So we're just saying, put it back in the capital reserve. So what we're suggesting is put 2 million in the capital reserve to keep a positive balance of 500,000. The mayor's suggestion is perfectly legitimate. We could take 116 of the 500 and fund the difference. Correct? Leaving 386,000 additional in the reserve. I just want to point out that the tax supported reserve will be depleted. So we're not in a good position from a tax supported reserve perspective. And as we know, we have more projects coming up. We're going to rely on that. I think our transfer to that reserve is 1.27 from operating.
It's just under 1.8 this year.
So what the mayor's suggesting is I think from an accounting perspective is perfectly legitimate, but it does diminish the balance in that capital supported reserve.
Okay. So, Councillor Brennan is suggesting that we do this with a 0.6 increase to the 2.9. The mayor suggests, or Councillor Robinson, sorry. The mayor suggesting using reserves instead. So we've got both of those options. I'll look to my colleagues. Councillor Brennan, are you ready to weigh in? Or some other creative option?
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about $100,000 here, which is a far cry from where we started, thanks to staff's efforts to get us where we are today, right? And the other part of it is just remember that the water and the wastewater charges are going up a bit more than that. And if my calculation or what I read in the report is correct, if you add the proposed, I think it's a proposed tax increase of 0.6, it's $150 per household more than they paid last year if you look at both of those things. So, and the mayor will know, and Councillor Quinn will know that I am never ever going to support a tax increase of any sort without some pretty big evidence. People are struggling in their households, so I'm going to say that I prefer to keep it at 2.9. I agree with Councillor Robinson. I think inflation is more than that, so that puts pressure on us. But I think that with the capital work that we're doing here, it rivals last year. And last year, I was just astounded how much work we got done. And this is a similar situation. I agree. I wish that Marguerite Street was included in this. But if there's any way we can comfortably, and I'll look to staff, what kind of peril we are from taking it from a reserve to help fund $100,000. That's what I would be prefer to do. Keep it at 2.9.
Okay, I think I got you. Councillor Miller, Councillor Quinn. Councillor Quinn.
Through the chair. Yes, I am on that 2.9% tax rate. I think people are really having a hard time. I think we have to be very aware of how much people are having a hard time. All we have to do is just check Facebook and watch what people are asking for. So I think we have to be very cautious about what we do here. So keeping the tax at 2.9% to me is where we should be. I heard what the mayor said about taking some money out of reserves. That could work. It could work. So I think that's definitely an option that we should look at, keep our minds open to all of that, and be cautious of where we go. I do think there are some places that maybe we can eventually, like maybe with the Chamber of Commerce and Victoria Park and tourism, maybe we can put this all together where it's not going to cost us as much as we really think at the moment. So let's work on being cautious here, and let's not get taxes too high.
C.O. Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my caution would be going to a reserve works if it's a one-time expense, but the 116 is an ongoing. So if we fund it from a reserve, we're kicking the ball down the field, and we'll deal with it next year at this table when we deal with the 2025 budget. It's perfectly legitimate to do that, but we're not solving the 116,000 problem or gap. We're simply deferring it. We're borrowing money from a reserve to defer it so we deal with it next year.
Councillor Quinn.
Just a comment through you. Yes, I hear where you're coming from, but you know what? I've sat at this table for many years, and we always get, this is one of the worst years we've ever had. We keep saying that over and over and over again. Well, every year is different, so we have to look at things differently. And yeah, this could be one of the worst years we've ever had, but it's been going on for like 20 years or so.
C.O. Morris.
The other statistic I would remind you of in the report that Mr. Dickey prepared, he took a historical look at tax rate increases versus inflation. And after 10 years, we're 9 points behind inflation. So a 2.9 when inflation's annually running at 3.7, 3.8. We're falling further behind. So we just have to be aware of inflation's real. We can't help that. And we need to come to terms with that's the cost of doing business. And I know it's a lot, I get that, but that's the cost of running a municipality. We need to have those conversations with AMO about a different funding formula for municipalities, but until that happens, we're subject to inflation just like everyone else.
I'll make a couple of comments. No one has suggested this was the worst year. This is a very good year and a very good budget. If we're looking at costs of a rate increase of 3.5%, that's darn good for Smiths Falls in 2024 when we look around us. Cities going up 8, 10, 14%. So this is not the worst year. This is a very good year for the budget. And I agree with Councillor Brennan. He said he wouldn't support a tax increase without evidence. Well, I think everybody at this table feels exactly the same way, no matter how long we've been here. We don't flippantly increase property taxes without evidence, need, solid budget, good discussion, and good research by our staff. So I'll turn it to Councillor Miller for her input, and then I'll finish this up for now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a really tough call, but I think you summarized that very well. We're not without the pressures of inflation, just like everyone else is, and it hurts. We're looking at a $24 million water tower build. We've got a patch on the old one. I mean, it's evident we've got to get to work. And so as much as we don't want to raise taxes, I think the extra 0.6% helps us not kick it down the field to next year. And I think Councillor Robinson spoke to that a little bit earlier about, our capital list and all of the things we have to get to. And we really can't afford to put off these projects much longer. And so I do hope we can make some movement with AMO, because I don't think this should be all on us, but I do support the tax rate increase.
As do I, and unfortunately without our tiebreaker here tonight, we'll have the information you're asking for is perhaps undecided. I would like to see us to go to 3.5 to make up that difference. And I have 3 councillors wanting to look seriously at the reserve. Yes, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I'm not going to, it is 0.6. It's not 1.6 or 2.6, it's 0.6. So, I hear all the arguments around this, and so I'm not going to hold anything. I'd support whatever council decides. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like if I don't get my 2.9 and everyone wants the 0.6 onto it, I'm certainly going to vote for the budget. I'll say that.
So you're okay with the adding to go to 3.5 tax rate increase then, Councillor Brennan, just to be clear?
I can live with it.
Okay. All right, thank you. So staff have their direction on that particular topic. Majority of council at this point would like to see the 2.5, the 2.9 rate that we had initially set moved to 0.6 further to 3.5. And then provide direction on alternatives or updating them. So is that really what you needed tonight?
It is, yes.
Thank you. And thank you all, both my colleagues here and all the staff who've worked so hard on this. And the date of the next one is February, the final draft, February 12th.
February 12th, yes.
Well, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, just for posterity and clarity, committee's comfortable with the capital budget as well. Is that?
Yes, for
True statement?
clarity, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
This is where Councillor Robinson will just step out, and we'll do the pre-budget approval of the police cruiser with Acting Chief Empey. Welcome, and thank you for your patience.
Oh, that's okay. Good evening, council members. I'm here to request pre-budget approval for our part of our capital budget in regards to the purchase of a fully marked, and I'm going to say a 2025 now police cruiser approved by the Smith Falls Police Services Board. I just received word through the Provincial Police Cooperative Group that we get our cruisers from, that Ford is sold out of the 2024 models for the police-related Ford SUV cruiser. However, they're going to honor our pricing for the 2024, so it's not going to affect the budget. But I'd like to move quick because we already have a bit of an increase from our quote that we received in November of 2023. We did have a budget of $80,000, and I am confident that it's going to stay within that budget or below once we get it fully equipped and packaged. Just to provide a bit of background, the Smith Falls Police Service will be upgrading one of our existing vehicles. Traditionally, we have been replacing one cruiser each year due to the high cost of repairs, age, usefulness of our fleet. The cruiser that we're purchasing will be a fully marked 2025 Ford Explorer all-wheel drive SUV. The vehicle is purchased through the Provincial Police Cooperative Group at a substantial savings. And the total cost with the additional specialized equipment that we put in the cruiser and the changeover costs, it's approximately under $80,000, including the HST. And like I said, the quote that we had in November 2023 has gone up slightly, that I just received a quote the other day. The vehicle will be replacing our oldest Ford Explorer in the fleet, a 2017. And the intent of that vehicle will be to sell it at an auction that takes place in the spring. The reason for this pre-budget approval is that there are limited time for the run of the police purposed vehicles by the manufacturers and the price increases. And like I said, they've already sold out of the 2024. So, and in addition to that, it does take several months for us to receive the vehicle, equip it, and put it into service. Their budget implication, the total cost will be under that $80,000 that we did budget for. If it is repurposed elsewhere within the town, there is no revenue, but if we do sell it at an auction later in the spring, there'd be potential revenue for that vehicle to put back into to taxpayers' dollars, depending on the value of that vehicle.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Quinn.
Thank you, Jody, for that. And wonderful if we can have a 2025, right? 2024, that's excellent.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the 2017 that you could take to auction, because vehicles are just non-existent out there.
Yeah.
Like to buy another vehicle, they're running out of them. So the 2017 has some value, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And that's great to look at that. That can come back into the coffers. So.
Yeah, and we repurpose as much as we can because we strip the vehicle of all the police-related equipment. So if we can repurpose it into a new vehicle, we will.
So you were supporting the pre-budget approval? I'm seeing nods all around, and council does support that very much. Committee supports it. Thank you. Council will support it in the future.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Director McMunn, you're back up on the transportation feasibility study.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess I'll preface the report with saying it sounds like council's approved the operating capital budget going forward. So this is a bit of a formality at this point. But if council recalls, back on the 23rd of October in 2023, Marilyn Bird from the Lanark Rural Transportation Working Group came as a delegation, presented to council with an ask of financial support for a feasibility study for rural transit within Lanark County and inclusive of Smith Falls in the amount of $3,600. So the report speaks to that. We do know that the County of Lanark has provided funding in the amount of $26,400, and they're asking for the town to support them in the amount of $3,600. So I'll leave it at that. I'm happy to take any questions. I will say that I did meet with Marilyn and Lisa, probably going to get her last name wrong, Benoit, I believe, she's on the working group as well from Algonquin College. Had a really, really great narrative with them after they presented as a delegation. And I do think what they're trying to achieve with this feasibility study really does align with the town's interests in trying to bring some type of transit system to Smith Falls for our residents of town. I believe the $3,600 is a small price to pay for the feasibility study, and hopefully we get some information out of that will help us going forward.
I'm seeing thumbs up all around. Yes, full committee support for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Barlow. Water report and utilities.
The moment we've all been waiting for.
Well, it's a very interesting report. I wish Councillor McGuire was here. He loves data.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairperson, members of council. Tonight I bring forward report 2024-009, which is the fourth quarterly report for 2023. It's very self-explanatory. The numbers are consistent with the other reports throughout the year that you received. You will notice that our non-revenue water numbers are down to close to that 30% threshold, which is what our goal was when we started in 2019, 2020 in reducing our non-revenue water for the town and utilities. Our coagulant usage, you will notice that there is a steep increase in December for coagulant usage, and that's because of the deterioration of the raw water quality due to the low levels in the lakes and the amount of water that was being sent to us by Parks Canada, because they control the gates and the dam and all those structures. So because of that, we had some increased chemical costs, which also ran into the first few weeks of January as well. So you'll see that in the follow-up quarterly report for number 1 for 2024. In the report, it has your year-to-date total, so it gives you a summary of where we ended the year. These numbers will be presented in more detail in our summary reports that will be coming out before the end of March, as we're required to bring a summary report to council annually before March 31st. So we'll have more details on the year-to-date numbers, but I will leave the report as it stands, and if you have any questions or comments.
Mayor Penko?
It's great to see continued progress, and we know we have more water customers, as Treasurer Dickey mentioned earlier. It certainly, more people are coming online and consuming our water, yet we're producing less because you've solved a lot of the problems and challenges that we faced in previous years. So, and which in the end is more environmentally friendly. We're using less chemicals, using less energy, and we're saving money all the way along. So just great job to you and your team.
Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. And Jason, you know where I was watching today, because there was a major water break and staff were right there, right on top of it. They found it right away, and I do believe I have another email on here showing me that it is completely fixed, filled in, and even paved over the temporary patch on it. So those are the kind of things that keep the town moving along properly. And when you can find water like that is flowing away, costing us money, and get it fixed immediately, excellent, positive, very positive. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, through the chair, the team's really responsive to the turn on how we now manage our flows and our non-revenue water. So they're really responsive to increases to be able to get out there to do whatever we can to make sure that we're as efficient, as effective as possible for the town through the utilities.
My comment is thank you for the report and the update, and we've received it as information. I also want to, the feedback in our surveys on the budget, people did question the cost of water and our wastewater, and I really encourage them to read these reports, and if they have questions, to talk to staff and understand the complexity of and costs of trying to do this work. They're looking at their consumption and saying, I want to use this much, but why am I paying? So, and I look forward to our communication people really helping the public understand that in this coming year, because it's complicated and is expensive. And yes, that's great.
Just on a follow-up from that, and thank you for what you had to say, Councillor McKenna, is I hope that you do another tour for the public through the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant if we can, because I was there, my husband was with me, and he was just totally blown away by how much the hydro bill is every month. And so people don't understand unless they go and they see what you're actually doing, and then people could have a better understanding of why their water rates are so high. Doesn't make it any easier to pay the bill, but at least you can understand it. And so,
yeah. And we will continue. We're Drinking Water Week is the same week every year, so we're going to continue with that progress and try to keep that in line for the public.
I know, it just encourages us when we're talking about it, rather than saying why our water rates are so high, why our water costs what it does. Councillor Robinson.
Actually, my comment was going to be exactly on that. You were talking about the increase in coagulant in December due to the low water levels. If people saw the color of that water going into the plant and coming out clear as a bell and ready to drink and safe, I think they'd appreciate that. So, thanks.
Thank you very much. We've received it as information.
Thank you.
Getting there, the Trail Network partnership agreement. Ms. Crowder, really interesting idea.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm excited to bring this new partnership opportunity to council. We've been working on it with for a number of months. So it's a multi-year, multi-regional tourism partnership initiative, and that includes the counties of Frontenac, Lanark, Leeds, Grenville, County of Renfrew, and RT11, as well as the town of Smith Falls as a single-tier municipality, and also having two trails actually intersect with our community. So we're a big stop and intersection for the trail network. The project aims over time to expand the trail and make connections of these individual regional trails into one large Eastern Ontario multi-use loop. So this really connects with the goal of increasing overall tourism, visiting the trail, and corresponding economic benefits to the community serviced by the trail. And again, Smith Falls intersects with two, so that's really important for our community. We've also been working on the active transportation network and master plan that was adopted by council last year or the year before. We did a tourism cycling assessment in 2021, I believe, which says that we need to look at updating and including infrastructure to attract tourism cyclists, because it's a big market that we're not capitalizing on. So this is a really big opportunity, and it comes at a very minimal cost of $3,000 a year for 3 years. And that fund is already included in my operational budget, so there's no increase. We've just put that money towards this trail partnership rather than spending it on other things. So I'm asking for Mayor and Council to approve Clerk and Mayor to sign off on the partnership agreement.
Councillor Quinn.
thank you. So I'm very happy to see this come forward. One of my comments is, because I have been talking with CAO Morris about us needing a trailhead for the Cataraqui Trail. And he has come up with a suggestion of where that could be. But when that trailhead goes in, it should be connecting the other trails. It should be telling people how you connect to the other trails. So here we are with this nice trailhead that's not just the Cataraqui Trail, but the other trails all coming together. So people do know how to get around our municipality to connect up. So a positive, very positive.
So I did see a thumbs up from Councillor Brennan, and I'm seeing everyone else. What a great idea.
Not mine, but I'm happy to
No,
get
no, I'm
forward
glad we're
and
part-
happy to be part of it.
Let's give an order to the clerk and the mayor to sign.
That's right.
Right. Thank you very much. Any updates from boards, external organizations? It's been a long night. If you could save it. We have no correspondence, no notice of motions. I'm seeking a motion to adjourn. Councillor Brennan, so moved, and seconded by Councillor Miller, that the committee adjourn its proceedings at 8:07 and stands so adjourned. The next due to call committee meeting. Oh, yes, all in favor? Carried.
Feels like mallet ready to
Who's that governor in the state, or the speaker who's got pause?
Johnson?
No,
it's, the head of the Republican.
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell.
Just go.